I'll give a hand signal. Make sure everything's cool. And on it. And here we go. And over the speed bump. Oh yeah. What's up, mailman? How you doing? Almost everybody has heard about the Model T, but a lot of what they've heard is often wrong. It wasn't the first car, it wasn't the first American car, it wasn't even really the first mass-produced car, but what it was the first car that regular people could afford to buy and actually use. It was sort of a proof of concept of the car itself. And the thing is, they're actually stranger than you think. Even though they were very common, the way the Model T worked and ran and the way the controls operated have really nothing to do with how modern cars work at all, or even cars that are pretty damn old. It's its own unique, strange way of doing things, so I want to get inside and show you just how weird it actually is. So driving a Model T, when you get inside, it's not like you're overwhelmed with the number of controls. There's really hardly anything here. Over on the right side, you've got a lever here for throttle. Now, it's sort of cruise control-like in the sense that you put it somewhere and it'll stay there. You don't have to keep modulating it like you would a gas pedal. It's got all these little detents that just keep it where you put it. So you set the amount of throttle you want and then you forget about it until you're ready to change it again. On this side, we have the Spark Advance. This is not a control anybody used to driving any kind of modern-ish car is going to really be used to. But basically what this does, it either advances the spark timing or retards it depending on how you're driving at that particular moment. You generally, when you're driving and you're settled down into a particular throttle position, you don't have to mess with it that much, but it is an extra thing to think about that most people aren't used to. So the pedals are a whole other story entirely. There's 3 of them, just like you're used to with any manual transmission car, and they don't really do exactly the same things that you're used to. There's a brake pedal, like you're used to, but it's where you're used to the throttle pedal being. So your right foot is going to control the brake. In the middle, you have a pedal just for engaging reverse gear. So it's pretty much you push it down, you're in reverse, and you adjust your throttle, you go backwards. When you're done, you let go of the pedal. The pedal on the left is, you're used to the clutch pedal being there, and this is sort of a clutch pedal, but it's really more like your shifter. So if you push it all the way down, you're in low gear. If you let it halfway up, you're in neutral, and if you let go of it entirely, you're in high gear. It sounds a little weird, but in practice, it's not quite as confusing as you'd think. I'm excited to try it out again. All right, so taking off in the Model T, I'm going to be letting go of this kind of e-brake slash neutralinator and push it forward, and then I'm going to push the shifter pedal, let's call it, all the way to the floor for first gear. And then when I brake, I got to remember to pull up to the halfway point, a little closer to me actually, for neutral. So right now I'm kind of holding it in neutral. And if I let out, I can feel it tug a little bit for high. I'm a little bit neutral. And as I push it forward, I can feel those belts tighten ever so slightly to go into drive. I'm good whenever. All right, here we go forward. I'm going on, and off we go. And it's a strange feeling. I mean, you're high as hell, for one thing. I know the command seating position is big in SUVs these days, and you've absolutely got it here. You're in command seating, way high off the ground, and everything's really spindly and windly. Steering is heavy, strangely heavy. You've got a fair amount of play in the wheel, probably because this thing's over a century old, and then you feel it really pull on these big spindly wheels. It's interesting. Give a little more throttle. Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm driving a relic. We turn this way. There we go. There we go. Let off a little bit. And push it. So modulating your speed is weird. I mean, considering I'm not used to it, it's weird. Some of it you kind of clutch down, or the equivalent. All your muscle memories are backwards. Pushing down on this leg makes you go faster instead of decoupling the engine. The brake on this side is weird, but you do kind of get used to it. It's weird, it's foreign, it doesn't feel right, but after a few minutes, your brain does start to do a little bit of rewiring. One nice thing about a Model T, though, is they weren't really delicate. You didn't have to worry about bumps in the road or anything like that. because you have so much ride height and so much wheel travel, everything was fine. All right, let's see, I go into neutral, I'm gonna brake, I'll give a hand signal, make sure everything's cool, and on it. And here we go, and over the speed bump. Oh yeah. What's up, mailman? How you doing? We've just time traveled. Can you please send me to the nearest apothecary? I need to have my lineaments rematriculated. It's very visceral. Yeah, we'll probably have to stop pretty soon. So as you can see, we decided this would be a good time to stop for a little while. This is a real Model T motoring experience. I think watching your Model T spew steam out of the radiator while you're parked on the side of the road was something many, many Americans experience. So I feel kind of honored to have that same experience from so long ago. These are fascinating cars. These are literally what put America on wheels and driving, and it's really not like driving anything else. It's a dead end. It's a way of driving that stopped at this one point and is never gonna come back to again. But it worked while it worked, and it worked for a hell of a lot of cars. So it's worth remembering and, you know, respecting. So thanks, Model T. While the Model T may have been slow and strangely engineered by today's standards, I soon found out you can have a very, very different experience driving something that started as a Model T. All you have to do is just change pretty much everything about it. So those old Model Ts, like the one we drove around before, makes about 20 horsepower, and they were absolutely everywhere. They made millions and millions of them. After those things started to die off and ended up off the roads, they actually had kind of a second life doing something very, very different. And this that I'm in right now might be the best example of what some of those old Model Ts became. This body is from the same year Model T as what I just drove, a 1914. But that's about all this has in common with a regular Model T. This was a recreation of a car that existed back in 1959 called the Grasshopper. It's using a massive Oldsmobile engine with a huge blower on it, a LaSalle transmission. It makes about 800 horsepower at the wheels at a rough estimate. It weighs only about 1,200 pounds. The power to weight ratio of this thing is probably better than like a Bugatti Veyron. It's absolutely insane. The interior has no floor. Literally, you're sitting kind of on top of the transmission itself, and then there's just open air below you. You can actually watch the road under here. It feels kind of like you're sitting inside a massive chromed engine. And really, you sort of are. This is just a Model T roadster body mounted to a massive engine with some wheels attached. It's an amazing car. It does one thing really well, and that's go very fast for very short distances. Now, just to give you a sense of how powerful and terrifying this thing is, I've been told when I'm driving it not even to touch the throttle. I'm supposed to stay in first gear, don't touch the throttle, be ready on the brake, just use the clutch to get moving. So I'm healthily nervous. It's worth more than I am, even if you parted me out and sold all my organs individually. But I think even with all that in mind, even as terrified as I am of doing anything to harm this thing in the slightest, it's worth trying out just so we can really see and feel the potential for what a Model T could become. That was the most amazing and mildly terrifying experience I've ever had while barely touching the throttle in any car, ever. This is a really great example of the breadth of experience of the Model T. From every person's raw machine for just getting around to an absolute monster that can tear ass down a track. It's really an incredible thing. And I want to thank everybody at Galpin. I want to thank Bo and Dave and John and all the guys who spent so much time helping us and letting us try all their amazing cars and sadly occasionally break things. But it was a blast, and hopefully we'll be back again to drive even more stuff. So thank you, Galpin. We appreciate it. It's like if you ever do, you know, psychedelic drugs and then being very aware of every motion you're making. It's kind of like that in automotive form. I'm not so sure that's the best analogy now that I've actually heard it come out of my mouth. Don't read into any of that, please.